The streak is over. For the first time in almost a month, the West Virginia men's basketball team was able to get a victory. Hear all about that, as well as looking at Bob Huggins' legacy in the BlueGoldSports.com podcast. What's going on, everyone? Wesley Shoemaker, Aaron Parker back with you on the BlueGoldSports.com podcast. The winning ways are back in Morgantown. West Virginia wins a game which they controlled from the start to the finish against Iowa State on Tuesday, breaking a 7-game losing streak. And more importantly than anything, the Mountaineers were able to put a complete game together from start to finish. Obviously, big news started before the game, the return of Shaq Sherman, as well as a few lineup shakeups, which we will get into. But Shaq and company did come out. The offense was phenomenal, shooting 50% from the floor in the win. And Aaron, how good does it feel to finally be talking about a win with this ball club?
It was great. This team has been struggling. They've had a couple games where they deserved to win. They just couldn't get over the hump. So it felt like it was never going to happen again, really. So it feels good to be talking about the Mountaineers when, the context is not like, why did they lose and stuff like that. This is a good game. Iowa State's a good team, but they didn't show me a whole lot yesterday. That's a game that the Mountaineers absolutely had to win. Texas Tech was must win, but Texas Tech is really good. Iowa State didn't show me all that much. So glad the Mountaineers came out to play yesterday.
Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed seeing an offense that didn't constantly struggle to find points. I think it got started early. You saw back-to-back three-pointers on West Virginia's first two possessions, and then you kind of saw things snowball from there. I really liked how West Virginia never seemed to be at a point in the game where they were worrying about losing. I feel like they were able to play fast. They were able to get in space. They were able to play their own game rather than having to react and play Iowa State's game.
Yeah, I agree. They got out to an early lead. That's what they haven't done that a whole lot lately. I know they took an 8-point lead in the half in Waco against Baylor, but they really set the tone out early. I like the lineup change with Huggins with Kobe Johnson and Polycap. Pauly just gives you that energy. I know he hasn't been great all season. He struggled in Big 12 play, but everybody else has, so why not? He gets the students into it. I think he played a good game, and the Mountaineers got a lot from Seth Wilson early. It was great to see him drive, take it to the hoop, and then that opens up his jumper, and his jumper looks good. So the way they start, I think, really dictated the game.
Yeah, going to the lineup changes, obviously, for those who don't know, Bob Huggins changed his lineup, and he's been talking about making changes. He's been talking about getting new guys in the game, and he finally did that on Tuesday. You saw the starting five for the Mountaineers go Kobe Johnson, Shaq Sherman, Sean McNeil, and then you had Jalen Bridges and Polycap as your two forwards. I think Pauly was more effective than Kobe, but I wouldn't say Kobe was not effective. I think West Virginia has a true point guard in Kobe Johnson that they don't have in Kedrian Johnson or Malik Curry. I think Malik is more of a driver of the basketball, and I think Kedi is more of a score first rather than pass first. I think Kobe can really initiate, settle, and like get into offense and get into sets compared to the other point guards. And I do think Pauly provided something you didn't see. He played 16 minutes, 1 of 2 from the field, finished only 2 points, but he was all over the place. He was doubling. He was going back and forth. He was getting up and down in transition. You saw your bigs running yesterday. And he just seemed to have an energy with him on the floor and to have that enthusiasm and to play hard and to go after loose balls. And I think for a team that's been searching for so much effort, and for over the last 2 games you've gotten that effort, it was good to see that effort finally get rewarded with a victory.
Yeah, absolutely it was. I like the way Polycat played. I think there was one play where towards the end of, middle of the second half or something like that, he got a blocker, he scored, and then he slapped the floor, but then he gave up a layup. But outside of that, Polycat played good. Kobe Johnson, I like what I saw of him. He hit a 3 and he only took 2 shots. I still need to see more of him about your point of being a true point guard. I think he could be. He just hasn't got all the minutes to where he showed us his point guard capabilities. But like you said, Malik gets downhill. He's not really, all that much of a passer, and Keaty's kind of score first on some days. But it was good to see that. And guys like Keaty, I know Keaty, he went full out, diving for a ball on the floor. Just haven't seen much of that from the Mountaineers this year. And I know Huggins has not been happy with that. So it's good to see them get on the floor and dive for loose balls.
Yeah, I think after the game, Huggins kind of talked about how he's been looking for guys to, instead of reach for the ball, dive for the ball. And he said he was very happy and it was good to see his guys go after the ball. I think another thing that you can kind of, if you just want to look at stats, is the way West Virginia shot the ball and then the way West Virginia defended. Since conference play, in Big 12 play, the Mountaineers had only been shooting 38%, just above from the field. They shot an even 50%, went 22 of 44 from the field, 10 of 20 from beyond the arc. That's exactly what you want. Like, if you can find that 40 to 50% range from the field in most of your games, you're going to give yourself a chance to win. And also, West Virginia had been allowing its opponents to shoot 43% from the field, and they only allowed Iowa State to shoot just under 38% from the field. So if you're looking at averages, if you're looking at numbers, West Virginia wins that battle, and I think that's a reason why. It's because they were finally able to figure out their offense, and on defense, I wouldn't say Iowa State shot the ball badly. I'd just say West Virginia forced them into a lot of tough shots. I think they forced them into shooting shots at the end of the shot clock. They forced them into 3-pointers, but not close 3-pointers. They were 3-4 steps beyond the arc. And I think when you do that, you're going to have to live with it. Like, if you can force a team to take a shot with less than 5 seconds on the shot clock, or if you force a team to take a tough 3-pointer and they beat you, all right, you can live with that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of been the story of the years, how WVU has at some points not been able to put the ball in the hoop. And the more frustrating part is how wide open they leave guys on defense and how easy it is for opponents to score. They did a good job. Only gave up 63 yesterday. A talented guy in Brockington, he only had 11 points or something like that. He didn't really shoot the ball that effectively. I know Tyrese Hunter kind of went off. I kind of predicted that one. He's a good freshman, but he had 22, but he turned the ball over 6 times. You'll take that all day, and then the rest of the starters combined for 2 points. That's good defense. And, yeah, it was pretty hard to believe. The Mountaineers, put the ball in the basket. They shot 50% from the field yesterday. And like they've been doing pretty good from the charity stripe as well. So it was good to see guys like Seth Wilson, I think Sean went 3 for 3 from beyond the arc, and Taz. I mean, you got to give Taz a lot of credit. Taz is coming off a concussion and immediately goes out there and scores what did he score? 16, 3 or 5 beyond the arc. That's a good game, and he just came off injury, so he deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, the one thing for Taz Sherman is this was his 3rd concussion, he said. He said he dealt with one in high school, dealt with one his first year at West Virginia super early on in the year, but that his symptoms were worse than they'd ever been for a concussion. Obviously, I'm not a doctor and I really don't know the science behind a concussion, so I'm not going to act like I do here. But when you're a guy who is a athlete and you have to rely upon moving fast, moving quick, making quick decisions, passing, shoot. Like, when you're playing a game like basketball and you have all those quick decisions, I think when you have a concussion, it can kind of play mind games with you while also you're physically unable to do anything. Like he said, he struggled with seeing light. He struggled with concentrating, with reading, with watching things. Like, those things that we all just take for granted, it seems, he was struggling with. And I think, as the team said, when he got cleared to play, Huggins said it was kind of, we could all kind of breathe a sigh of relief. We all kind of were like, okay, and we could settle in. I think everyone was more on edge about Taz's health and hoping that he can be okay. And I think him coming back kind of relaxed everyone. Sure, it certainly relaxed this offense, it looked like, and it led to a West Virginia win, which they badly needed.
Yeah, having Taz in that lineup is huge. I mean, listen to his post game from last night. Just like you said, you take stuff like that for granted. When he was down on the 4 down at Waco, he's just kind of like looking up at the basket, see if he could see it and everything.
He said he went out, so he said,
yeah, he was like, yeah. That's a bad injury, and for him to come back in like a week or so like that, score 16, make 3 threes. What he talked about and what Hugs talked about was just like his cardio and how he didn't want to overdo it, and he wanted to get out when he needed to get out. So I think they played that smart. I think Taz was good in keeping himself disciplined and giving his team the best minutes he could possibly give last night.
Hopefully Taz can get going, and hopefully he kind of returns to form, because last night, just having four guys that can score double digits for you is a lethal thing. And you had Sean, you had Taz, I think you had JB, and then you had Malik. I think those are your four scores, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And so when you have that, it just brings another element, because Malik, obviously he didn't go too great from he didn't get his guy. He got his points at the line. He went to the line, and a lot of them came late. And I got to give Malik his props that this team, for the first half of the year, the one thing everyone said was a glaring weakness was free throw shooting, free throw shooting, free throw shooting. And since conference play, I think this team, I'm not sure of this exact statistic, but I think this team has to be one of the best free throw shooting teams in the conference. And I think they worked on it. I think they heard their coach yell and scream and complain that these guys aren't working on it, and we need them to work on it. And they got better at it. And I think that is a positive going forward. And I think if you're going to want to go anywhere, and if you're going to want to make the tournament, I think being able to rely on your free throw shooters to step up to the line late is a big deal.
Yeah, earlier in the year, watching that UConn game, pulling off that upset, how many free throws did that team miss? In that night, I thought, okay, this is going to be another awful WVU free throw shooting team. Here we go. There's been other holes, obviously. They lost 7 straight games in a good conference, but free throw shooting's been consistent. I did a few weeks ago, Hugs talked about that drill that they used to do where they'd be doing free throws while fatigued and somebody would be in their face. I think that's been paying off for them, especially guys like Malik and JB. JB's really worked at it. Talking about Malik getting to the line yesterday, a lot of his points did come from the line, and I thought he got to the line very good down the stretch. He would drive, and he'd always find a body of an Iowa State defender. And I don't think Iowa State did a very good job of, like last 2-3 minutes when they need a stop and then they need a quick score. They'd foul Malik pretty early in the shot clock and then go down and hoist up a bad shot. So I don't think Iowa State played that one out very well, but Malik did a good job of getting them off balance. So credit to Malik.
Yeah, Malik kind of controlled the game there down the stretch. They'd put the ball in his hands, which was an interesting change from a Taz, no matter what, to, all right, we got a guy that we can go to. And I think that was a very pleasant surprise for the Mountaineers. One thing I want to get to is Seth Wilson. Obviously, you kind of touched on him a little bit, but Huggins has said, let's go make some changes. Let's get these freshmen in the game. He said Seth Wilson can shoot, Jamel King can shoot, Kobe Johnson can shoot. Kobe Johnson, 3 on the opening possession, I think opening or second possession. I can't remember if it was him or JB first. Seth Wilson comes in the game. He goes on a 7-0 run by himself. He's at the 3-point line and he drives straight to the basket, left-hand layup. I'm like, all right. And then he comes down, next possession 3. Next possession comes down, little mid-range J, forces an Iowa State timeout. That was 7 big points he got you. Kind of separate. He gave you that separation that you were looking for, gave you momentum, put the crowd on their feet. And I think they've been searching for that all year. And it was so good to finally see someone step up that was not our normal 3 of Sean, Taz, and JB.
Yeah, it was so good to see. And I love the confidence because I've heard good things about Seth. Taz talked him up a lot. Other guys have talked him up. Hugs has, a lot of times. I above anything loved his first bucket was his layup. He went in strong. He's got strong shoulders, but I know he's not very tall. He went in with force and he got himself at the right angle. He didn't just throw up a layup and it happened to go down. He got himself in perfect position and just, I don't know, WVU hasn't done that a whole lot. Guards, take it to the hoop outside of Malik Curry and he kind of goes with the left, but it was good to see that. And then the 3-pointer that just opens up his outside game. He's got a good shot. And the 2-pointer is what surprised me. I was like, it was right inside the 3-point line. Only guy that usually shoots that is Sean McNeil. So once I saw that one go down, I was like, okay, he's got it tonight. And those 7 points were huge. That put Iowa State in a big hole early. It's hard for them to get out of it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing with this team and with this win is the way they were able to control Iowa State. So many times this team has been down early. They've fought, they've clawed back. All right, they've gotten within 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And then as soon as they do that, here comes a 14-0 run. Here comes a 10-3 run. Here comes another 8-point lead. And at that point, once you overcome one 8-point lead, it's hard to keep overcoming 8-point leads over and over again. So it was really good to see them kind of lead the whole game. They never trailed, which was a sight to see. Also, this offense almost put up 80 points. It's the most points they've put up since the beginning of conference play. That was also a good sight to see. And going back to your point of just finding separation, Iowa State kind of tried to get back in it, but West Virginia kept distancing themselves. And I think that was key. Iowa State would make a 6-0, 7-0 run here, but West Virginia would be right back with a couple buckets of their own. They would never let Iowa State get so close to where they felt they could come back. I feel like West Virginia, the whole game, had a stranglehold on this game.
Yeah, when they would lose a lead, it would just go down to 8 or something like that. That's a good position to be in. And after each time they gave up, kind of their lead, got it down to 9 or 8 points, they'd either call a timeout or just get right down to it and start scoring. Maybe in previous games they would have let bigger leads than just like a little 6 or 8-0 run. Mountaineers did a really good job with that because Iowa State made a few different runs. And, if you would ask me, I would have probably said, yeah, one of those runs is going to end up being a 14, 15-0 run, make it a 3-4 point ball game. And it's a whole new ball game at that point. When Iowa State's working and grinding, they get it down to 9. It's still not really a new ball game. You only need a couple more Mountaineer buckets, and then the Mountaineers are kind of rolling again. So WV did a really good job of not letting it get out of hand and not letting it get to a stressful game.
I'm not sure if I am a prisoner of this team was just on a 7-game losing streak before last night, but when Iowa State cut it down to, I think it was 8 with about 4 minutes left, I said to myself, here we go again. I thought it's going to be another Mountaineer collapse and it'll officially close the book on this season, but they didn't. And I think that was a big moment. I think they knew their backs were against the wall. They're no longer in last place in the Big 12. And I think although they're in second to last place, there's still something to be said about not being in last place and about kind of starting to fight your way back. And who knows where they could take them.
Yeah, this conference is so good that, being in 9th place, they're still not out of it. That's pretty hard to fathom. It's such a great conference. It's such a gauntlet. But yeah, when they went on that run, I'm the same way. It's not just being a victim of this team. It's watching it for years. And I was like, wow, this team just over the losing streak has unfortunately found ways to lose. Not to say that they haven't played hard every game. There's been a couple games where they didn't even show up. But in the games that they should have won, they found a way to lose. But none of those games they had a stranglehold like they had a stranglehold on Iowa State last night. So at that 4 or 5 minute mark, they were like, no. Yeah, they can have that little run, but it's not getting down past 8 points, So they did a really good job, and they wanted it, and they were just a better team last night. I don't think Iowa State – they're a good team, but, I'm not convinced that if WVU doesn't meet up with them another 2 times if they play them in the Big 12 tournament, I don't know if WVU can – they might be able to steal another couple wins against them. I don't know.
Mountaineers are 14-9 now. I think if you get to 19 wins, you're a lock for the tournament. I think if you get to 18 wins, depending on who you beat, you have a good chance at making the tournament. And I think this team can go on the road and beat Iowa State. And I think you've got to beat either Kansas or Texas at home. And then you've got to find 2 wins elsewhere. And I think they can. It's just a matter of they've got to play like this over and over again. They've got to replicate this performance. They can't have this performance just be an anomaly. And I think that's going to be the biggest key is you've got two winnable games. You've got two games now against teams you've already beaten. Yes, they're going to be on the road. Yes, it's going to be this Kansas State team you're going to play is going to be a little different. They're going to have their head coach. They're going to have a full roster. But I do think West Virginia winning is going to give them at least some sort of confidence, because if you think about it, these guys said last night after the game, no one in that room had ever lost that many games in a row. And so if you think about it, if I'm a guy and I've always won my whole life, if I've always kind of been in control and kind of controlled my own destiny, and now I'm looking up and I'm like, well, crap, I'm in last place in a conference and I'm fighting for my tournament life and I'm fighting for my season right now. I think it kind of can make people force things, make people have too much pressure on themselves. I think just getting that first win out of the way, hopefully, if you're a Mountaineer fan, hopefully, if you're West Virginia, opens the floodgates to more opportunities.
Yeah, you'd hope so. It's such a tough conference, but two winnable games. You've had two Big 12 wins up until last night, and they're against the two teams you're playing next in Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Here's the problem I have is just in previous years, even teams that were better than this team, they struggle on the road. So it's hard to be like, okay, they beat Iowa State, shot 50% from the field. Well, on paper, they should beat Kansas State because it's hard
Am I
because
wrong, or is the only road game against you their only road game that they won against UAB?
Yep, you're absolutely right. That was it. I saw the stat the other day. I was like, who's the one win? They didn't win a road game in the Big 12 play, and they didn't. It was UAB. I forgot about that one. But like other teams, let's go back to 2018, Javon Carter's senior year. You can go Deuce McBride's freshman year with Oscar Tshiebwe. Those teams were good. They would beat like Oscar Tshiebwe, Deuce McBride's their first year. They beat Texas and TCU by 30, and they lost both of those games on the road. Javon Carter's senior year was the same way. They beat teams and then they go lose to them on the road. So it's hard to be like, okay, well, they beat Iowa State, so mark that one down as a W when they go to Ames. It's just hard to do that because I've seen it too many times, but you got two winnable games here. Oklahoma State's got a losing record at this point, and it's just WVU's struggled to shut down Avery Anderson over the years. So if they can do that, then boom, you got two straight wins, and then they're looking up. It's just going to be tough to do that, though.
Speaking of Oklahoma State, last night they lost to TCU 77-73. Oklahoma State is now 11-12, 4-7 in conference play, I believe. Yep, and they sit just above, just a half game above West Virginia in the conference standings. Obviously, we'll touch on this again, but Oklahoma doesn't have a postseason to play for, so they're just playing for school pride themselves at this point, which can be dangerous, but it can also be a good thing if you catch them late in the season and they're like, well, we're not going anywhere, so what's the point to play hard? I think West Virginia, if they steal one of their next two, I think that puts them in a really good spot. I'm obviously we're way down the road here with this, but say West Virginia wins the next two and they come home and they get Kansas at home on a Saturday night, they win that game. That'd be 4 straight wins, 2 on the road, and then you beat Kansas at your place. I mean, I think at that point you're in the tournament, and I think at that point there'd be a lot of hype and a lot of, okay, like let's look at this team as a contender instead of a pretender, at least in the Big 12 conference tournament.
Yeah, I don't know how the next two games are going to play, but I'll tell you what, it's been the first time in a while I've been confident about it. I'm usually not confident about like road games, especially with this team, but they're two winnable games. And if they would win both of those on the road, or even like K-State, if they say they drop Oklahoma State and go beat K-State, that's going to make a big time matchup for a Saturday Kansas game. And it's already sold out. It's a night game. That's big time. WVU's had success in the Coliseum against Kansas. I've watched Kansas. they're really, really good. I mean, they beat Iowa State by double digits on the road without a Baji. I can't hardly get over that. So let's just say WVU steals one or two on the road, and then they come back, play Kansas, play a great game, but then they lose a heartbreaker. That's going to be a character tester because I can foresee that happening. And then you have to go play Iowa State and TCU on the road. That's farther down the road, but like I can definitely see Kansas being a heartbreak type game where they're so close and Kansas is just simply better. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, watching Kansas this week, I watched the end, most of the latter of the second half. I think it was like the last 6 minutes or so of Kansas and Texas, and I was just wowed at Kansas's. I mean, obviously late you're going to try and get the ball inside no matter what if you're Kansas because you're just that's your identity. But if you can kind of force other guys to beat you on Kansas, you can beat them. I know Texas late, they kind of shut down Mbaji. They were like, make someone else beat you. Make it the other four guys beat you. Let's make it a 4-on-4 basketball game. Texas won. They forced a Kansas turnover late, made their free throws when they had to, and they won. But back to West Virginia. They played 11 guys in the rotation last night. 10 of them saw double-digit minutes. I think if you're looking at the Biggs' minutes, you had Paulie with 16, Isaiah with 14, Gabe with 15. Gabe, though, he's going to get more minutes. It was just a matter of he got teed up right going into the locker room. That was his third after two. Very questionable if he calls. We'll leave it at that. And then Damon gave you 9 minutes. We've talked about the minute shares with these guys, and they're kind of all even. But Isaiah was benched. I think that's something. Isaiah was the only Mountaineer not to make a field goal if you attempted one. Gabe didn't attempt one, so we're not counting him on that list. Isaiah went 0 for 2 from the field. They just need to get a little more production. Obviously, yes, they won. Obviously, they out-rebounded Iowa State, but I think that was more of a group effort as well. Taz was your leading rebounder, which is questionable, especially with a guy coming off a concussion. I'm not sure if you want him banging around with some 7-foot guys, but either way, I do want to applaud the bigs because they've been criticized. They've been criticized by us. They've been criticized by everyone for their lack of aggressiveness, their lack of being a presence inside there. And I think last night you saw a mix of guys who were able to bring that physicality to the glass and to the inside for West Virginia, whether it was on the offense or defensive end.
Yeah, they did a good job. While they didn't sit there and dominate the game, Paulie gave you a lot of energy and gave you some boards. Damon made a field goal. That was pretty surprising. And then he got some boards. Paulie had a few blocks. It was just more exciting as far as watching the big men. Obviously, Isaiah struggled, but give credit when credit's due. They came out and played a good game, and we've seen Paulie start once, but it was. Who was it again? It was against somebody lesser, was it?
I think it was against Texas Tech when Taz wasn't there. They went three big. They went big with JB, Isaiah, and Paulie.
Okay, yeah. And he came out, he played better. Obviously, Texas Tech is a tougher matchup for him. He's going to have to be on guys like Marcus Santos Silva. And then, if he gets switched, Bryson Williams is 6'8" and can absolutely shoot the ball. So playing an Iowa State team was better for them, and they did a good job. They high-pointed basketballs at some points last night, and just they have not been high-pointing the basketball when it comes off the rim this year. So they did a good job.
One thing I want to make known, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, Aaron, is I don't want people to feel like this win shouldn't be and shouldn't feel like a big win, because it is a big win. Obviously, you're in the toughest conference in America. You want to get anything you can, but Iowa State was in the top 25 a week ago. If West Virginia played Iowa State this time last week, they would have been playing the number 20th ranked team in the country. And I think now it looks like, oh, you just beat a struggling Iowa State team at home. Like anyone could have done that. No, you give yourself the props of you just beat a top 25 caliber team. And yes, they were struggling, but you were struggling. You were the biggest struggler in the conference. So give yourself the props. You deserve this win. You earned this win. And I just hope they don't uh, devalue how big this win is, because it really is a big time win against a top 25 level team.
Yeah, agreed. Iowa State's been struggling in Big 12 play, but they're a good team. TJ Otzelberger, he's turned it around. You're talking about a team that went to Xavier and won. They went to Memphis and won. I know Memphis has kind of struggled, but that's a big win. They went to Creighton and won. They've beaten Iowa, and like that's a pretty good non-conference slate that they went 16-0 in. They beat Texas, the team that beat Texas.
Lost like 3 or 4 undefeated teams in the country.
Yeah, they were. And then since Big 12 play, they've struggled a little bit, but this team has beaten Texas and Texas Tech. And they're a good team. Isaiah Brockington's a player. Tyrese Hunter's a player. They had a couple shooters last night that went off the bench that killed the Mountaineers early. But no, they're not a bad team at all. You'll see them in the tournament unless the tires completely come off for them. And they're a good team. And it's when you lose 7 straight, any win is a big win. But a team that was number 20 in the country last week, yeah, that's a big win.
Yeah, funny story. My tire did completely come off my car on Saturday night, as I did have a flat tire. Story for another day, that is for sure. If anyone does have any places to get cars fixed and tires fixed, be sure to drop them in the Blue Gold Sports Twitter inbox for me. Back to basketball. This team, I think they kind of showed and flashed potential last night. We've been looking and we've been desperate for this team to play to their potential and to play hard for 40 minutes. And it was so relieving and such a good and wonderful sight to finally see them actually play to that potential, rather than them play to that potential for the first 28 minutes and in the last 12 minutes they fall off. Or they don't play to their potential until the second half, and by that time it's too little too late. Just things like that have hurt them, that have plagued them over the last month. They were finally able to break their bad habits that they had set over the past month, and I think one of those things is playing for a full 40 minutes.
Yeah, and just going forward, I'm just afraid that they're not going to do – I hope they do going forward, but you've seen previous Mountaineer teams where it's like, wow, this is a good basketball team, and then you start getting ahead of yourself.
Shy away at times too, which is not the greatest thing you want to see, and it kind of keeps that thought in the back of your mind. All right, so like, when's it going to break? When are they going to go back to the old same old?
Yep, and looking forward, if they – it's hard to ask this team or any team to go out and, hey, shoot 50% from the field again. Do that for another 2 games. It's a hard ask, but putting the ball in the basket in general has sometimes been a struggle when it's not Taz Sherman, and every 5th or 6th or 7th night it's not Sean McNeil, So getting that going forward, people that can put the ball in the back, give you 7 from Seth Wilson tonight, give me 14 from Jalen Bridges tonight. Keeping that going forward is going to be big for WVU.
Yeah, Iowa State, I'm looking at it right now. They've given up less than 62 points per game to their opponents this season. West Virginia just hung 80 on them. So don't think Iowa State was a good win. Iowa State's a top 4 defensive team in this conference, and the Mountaineers just put up 80 points. So don't think this cannot translate over to a team like Kansas, to a team like Texas Tech if they see them again, to any of these teams in this conference, because West Virginia has the guard talent to hang with anyone. It's just a matter of who else can step up, and if they can continue to find guys like Seth Wilson, Jalen Bridges, Malik Curry to find scoring for them, and they continue to maximize as much value as they can get from guys like Isaiah Cottrell, I think this team can start stringing together wins. And I know we've been saying what they can do to win, but we finally saw them actually do those things last night. And hopefully, And I am predicting, Aaron, I know I'm going out on a limb here. I do think they will start to, after they've seen themselves do it, I think that is a way they can kind of propel themselves forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's gonna be tough with the slate coming up, but if you can get guys like Seth Wilson to keep scoring and just guys that maybe aren't gonna be the story every night, but maybe Kobe Johnson, maybe Kedrian Johnson, or maybe Pauly Polycap, somebody that can give you 4 or 5 a night. That's big. That's gonna propel them to a couple more wins if they can keep up the consistency, keep knocking down free throws, and defense has got to be good going forward and not let everybody's best players have wide open threes all night.
Yeah, Caleb Grill, I wanted to point his name out. He went 4 of 6 from the field. All 6 shots were from beyond the arc, and it was kind of a okay, he's heating up. Don't let him heat up too much. Mountaineers seem to kind of control that, figure him out, figure the Iowa State offense out. And Iowa State's now struggled offensively in 2 straight games. Like they scored 43 points on Saturday. Come out, obviously you score a few more in 63, but they're built on their defense, and so they can't allow teams to score more than 70 points if they're going to want to win games down the stretch. And do I think the Iowa State team's a tournament team? Heck yeah, I do. But I just think there's glaring weaknesses with this Iowa State team if they cannot defend. But I also think there's glaring weaknesses with West Virginia, just like Iowa State, if West Virginia can't put the ball in the basket. So it goes without saying, West Virginia got a good win. They still need to get more wins, and it's just a matter of where they can find those wins from.
Yep, they're gonna have to start grinding them out. It wasn't as hard yesterday, especially when you're shooting 22 to 44 from the field, and you got a team that's not scoring all that well as far as their starting lineup goes. They're gonna have to start grinding them out. And I can foresee in the next 2 road games, either Avery Anderson, Nigel Pack, or both are gonna explode and have big games against the Mountaineers. We've seen it before. Nigel Pack, Avery Anderson, the Boone brothers, they can score and they can have their way against the Mountaineers. So if they do, you're going to have to combat their runs and score with them. And can the Mountaineers do that? I think they can. It's just a matter of will they going forward.
And I think they can because they also have Taz Sherman back. And I think him coming back is a humongous deal. And I think with him, you're just a totally different team on both sides of the floor. He's a leader. He's their guy. He's there. We look up to him to lead us, just like this team looked up to Deuce McBride last year. So I think having him is a big deal because you have that guy where you can give him the ball and be like, go win us a game, or go find space, get to the line, kick it out, draw a double. He is so good that he just draws so much attention, and it should help the rest of this offense flow.
Yep, Taz is that guy. We've seen that since the beginning of the year. We've seen it since last year. I remember seeing it in spurts. That first year he was here, he didn't get a whole lot of time. They went down at Baylor and they were getting killed, and Taz just took over the game. And that was his first year. And we saw a lot of it last year, and we've seen it all this year. He's that guy. He can get you a bucket when you need a bucket, if whether it come from the stripe, whether it come from inside the arc or outside the arc. He's a great leader. He's just a natural scorer, and you saw what kind of a team WVU is compared to when they're without him. I thought they played a hard, tough game against a good Texas Tech team without him. But look at where they are with them. And going back to the Baylor game, he scored 29 points. He should have been the one leading them to victory down the stretch, and he gets knocked out. And you saw the team they were without him in those final 3 or 4 minutes. So he's that guy, and getting his confidence up is big because it doesn't take much for him to get going.
One more thing that I wanted to highlight is my favorite thing I saw from last night's game, besides West Virginia winning, was them finally having success on a baseline out of bounds play. They had 3 baseline out of bounds plays where they scored points directly off that, and that was due to Taz Sherman. Sherman hit 2 mid-range jumpers and a 3-pointer off those plays. And I wrote them down because at the time I said, oh my gosh, no way they just did that. This team has just turned the ball over pretty much consistently whenever they've had a baseline out of bounds play. And it was so good to finally see them connect on not just one, but 3 of them. And they all came because of Taz Sherman. And I think those plays are the type of plays that are the difference between wins and losses. And if you're thinking about it, that's 7 points right there. If you don't have those 7 points, this is a lot closer ball game. And if it turns into a live ball turnover, that's points for Iowa State. So that's big time. Taking advantage of every possession with the ball is big time. And I think they valued the basketball. They tried to not turn it over. And when they did turn it over, you saw them get yanked. I know there was one point in the second half, Keedy kind of had the ball near the baseline and he just kind of got away from him. And immediately Malik Curry was put off the bench. Keedy was put on the bench. And so I think having that accountability with this team of, all right, we've got to take care of the basketball as priority 1 is key going forward.
Yep. It's at the point of the season where if you're turning the ball over left and right, you need to sit down. If your plus minus is always minus, you need to sit down. And to go back on your point of the inbound plays, they look good. And those are, like you said, vital 7 points right there. With Taz Sherman back and with his confidence up, you got to run those plays to him. What I want to see some inbound plays where, Sean can get a look or even JB. I want them to keep going through Taz for him, but every now and then catch somebody off guard and go JB or go Sean and get them an open look from deep. And I think that'll get their confidence up to get quick buckets instead of giving up transition buckets. So that was a good turnaround for the Mountaineers yesterday.
Yeah, and I think getting other guys involved then makes other teams think about those other guys, and then it leads to Sherman possibly getting involved too, which is good. Like having multiple guys on offense who can score is good, and this team showed that last night, and they showed how lethal they can be, scoring almost 80 points. Game balls for me, I want to give one to Taz, obviously coming back from the concussion, scoring 16 points. That's exactly what you need from him. Sean, I'm going to give him 1 too. We didn't really call Sean's name, but we really should have. 4 or 6 from the field. Perfect. Oh, yeah, perfect from beyond the arc. 13 points, a very quiet 13 points, but a very huge 13 points. And then Malik Curry, I was super impressed how he kind of took over the game late. He wanted the ball, put the ball in his hands, drove to the line, got fouled, made his free throws, made it and 1, connected on finished the 3-point play, kind of to ice the game, I think. And so just having guys that are confident and that want the ball, I think that's the biggest thing. Because when you want the ball and you're confident, like good things happen. But when you're like, who am I going to pass it to when you have an open shot? That's when you start getting into the troubled waters if you're West Virginia.
Yep, agreed. My game balls, I'm gonna go Taz is the obvious one. I can't say enough about the heart and the fight he's got, and he shows us day in and day out. The injury, the COVID situation, he gave the Mountaineers so much yesterday, a real shot in the arm. But then I'm going to give the other one to Seth Wilson. I couldn't really – I could see him or Kobe Johnson getting a 3 or something like that, but I did not see that little 7-0 run of himself happening, him getting to the bucket, showing us he can make a 3, showing us he can make a long shot from inside the 3-point line. It showed me a lot, and hopefully that he can get that going towards the end of the season. I think he could be a real player for the Mountaineers going forward into his sophomore year. So I'll give him the second game ball.
One more thing for me, kind of more on a fun note. There was a special guest in attendance on Tuesday. Obviously, if you haven't heard, Roy Williams, former head basketball coach at the University of North Carolina, inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, one of the greatest coaches ever. He was there. He had never been to a game at the Coliseum. Huggins told of a story how when he was coaching a basketball camp, him and Roy were together, and Williams came up to Huggins, and he seemed a little worried at first, and Huggins said, "Don't worry, the guys you recruit I can't get, and the guys I recruit you don't want," which I thought was a funny story, and I think that is kind of indicative of who Bob Huggins is. He's different. He's not the normal blue blood Bill Self, Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams. He's going to go after all the 5-stars. He's going to go get his guys who fit him, who fit his personality. And I just thought it was cool seeing a coach of that magnitude, a coach who has that much respect for Bob Huggins, and a coach who everyone has respect for, come to the Coliseum. He kind of hyped up the student section before the game. It looked like it was all on the other side of the court for me, from where my seat was and from where I was seated for media. But he just seemed to enjoy the environment and kind of enjoy the moment. And I thought it was a cool sight to see.
Yeah, he did. I'm glad he came. I remember a year or two ago, I saw something where he said, one place that he hasn't got to coach at that he would like to. And he said the WVU Coliseum. I was like, wow, a guy that's coaching all these games against, Carolina Duke, and how many he won 300 plus games with Kansas. So he played at Allen Field, or he coached at Allen Fieldhouse, and he wanted to come to Morgantown. I love the story about Hugs and the recruits and all that. He's a great coach, and it was great to see him. As far as me, when I sat down last night, I was sitting, up top, but I got a pretty good eye. I was like, is that Roy Williams? Like, why would Roy Williams be here?
You texted me there. Is that Roy Williams on the court? Yeah. And I was taking photos, and I was like, yeah, that's Roy Williams on the court.
Yeah, I was up top, but he wasn't even in my direction. But I saw his hair. I was like, that kind of looks like Roy Williams. And once I saw him cutting up with Hugs and laughing and hugging him, I'm like, yeah, no, that's him. It was good to see him get the students hyped up, and it was really good to see him take off that little sweater vest and put on a WVU sweatshirt. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, he's just a class act. And I think you have people who are just role models, and they are ambassadors for the game of basketball, and they're ambassadors for college basketball. And he's one of those guys. And he's one of those guys that will have the ultimate respect from everyone across the board for as long as he lives. And I think it was just really cool to see, at least from, like, obviously not up close and personal, but it was just cool to witness the respect and the level of love so many basketball fans just have for him. And I think, and I don't like saying it this way, because I think it makes it's not something that's true. I just think it's a generalization. I just don't think Bob Huggins has that type of street cred, if you want to say. I think people within the game recognize Huggins as the coach and as the Hall of Fame coach that he is. But if we're being honest, he should have been in the Hall of Fame a little while ago. And I think the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame yet kind of speaks to I don't want to say a bias, but more of he's not a blue blood coach, and he's done things that blue blood coaches have, and he's done it a different way. And I think when people go away from the normal way of doing things, it draws questions, it draws concern. And obviously the whole Cincinnati thing happened, but he's been at West Virginia, and he's built his legacy at West Virginia. And I do think he's deserving of getting in the Hall of Fame. I do think people within the game realize that. But unfortunately for Huggins, I don't think more of the casual basketball fan and more of the casual sport fans realize the impact he's had and the accomplishments he's really had and the things he's done, like the Roy Williamses. Obviously, Huggins hasn't won national championships, He's not in the Hall of Fame yet, but he has more wins than Roy Williams all time. And just seeing those two together, kind of, you can just draw a comparison between the two coaches. And obviously it's not the best thing in the world for West Virginia fans, as we all know who Bob Huggins is and how we adore him and how he's kind of an ambassador for the state, but it's the reality. And I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that, Aaron.
Yeah, it is the reality. The reality is he's not a blue blood coach at Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, UNC, Villanova, stuff like that. But he's done it. I mean, he's won more games than Roy Williams. He's right there. What is he, third active all time behind Coach K and Boeheim? It's an utter disgrace that he's not in the Hall of Fame, but it's not really a surprise. What?
Hopefully this year.
Yeah, you can hope. I just hope that they get it right before, time's up to where I want Hugs to enjoy it. I think it was Youngstown State's head coach. He used to be president of basketball ops up here. He says, like, guys, build the statue already. Like, don't wait. Build the statue now so Hugs can enjoy it now. I think it's the same thing with the Hall of Fame. He's won over 900 games. And if their argument is the no national championships, I don't buy it, because I think it's somewhat of a West Virginia treatment. He's not a blue blood coach. He's done it with Cincinnati and West Virginia. He's done it differently. He's done the treadmill thing. He's done getting guys that press 94 feet at AAU tournaments at 8 a.m. He's done it a different way, different style, but he should be in. He should be in now. He should have been in 5 years ago. So those are my thoughts.
What Bob Huggins means to not only the state of West Virginia, but where would this basketball program be if he did not come here in the early 2000s? Like,
it would be bad. It would be bad.
It's crazy to see the impact one person has. And I think whenever he does decide to retire, whenever he does say call it quits, I think the amount of love and the amount of support and the amount of recognition he will get, not only from the university, but from just people in general, will be a really cool thing to see. I think you'll see, if I'm just going off of what other schools has done. I wouldn't be surprised if they name that court on the Coliseum the Bob Huggins Court. Like, that's number one. Like, Carolina did it with Roy Williams. That's the Roy Williams Court in Carolina. I think it's the Coach K Court in Duke. Like, so many schools have done that. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that here. He's going to get a statue. He's going to get. They're going to roll out the red carpet for him and then some. And I just think, just thinking about it now, obviously, I don't want him to retire. I don't think anyone around this program and this school wants him to retire, but he's going to get his, and he's going to get what he deserves. And I think he deserves a lot more than the recognition he gets now.
Yeah, and he wants to win. I love him because he loves the state so much, and he wants to win so bad for the state and for these people. I mean, you've heard him say, if the Mountaineers were to ever win a national championship, he would just get them all on a bus and take it to every town. And it's like, well, let's meet at the hot dog stand in this town and just have everybody that wants to come touch the trophy or take a picture with it. They can do that. And you just don't hear that from other coaches. He really knows what it means to be a West Virginian, and because he's been here. He played for the Mountaineers. He's been around here pretty much his whole life. So he knows what it means, and that's why he's so lovable, and he deserves more than what he's gotten as far as recognition nationwide, but he'll get it. Like you said, he's going to get his.
He recognizes how hard the people in the state of West Virginia work. He realizes the mentality so many West Virginians have, and he realizes that so many people look up at West Virginia University and at the sports at West Virginia University like a religion, and he realizes that the people in the state think of West Virginia football, West Virginia basketball, and other sports too within the school as something that is bigger and that represents all of them in the state. And he tries to embody that in every single thing he does. And I also think he tries to embody that with the players he recruits. And I think going back to that Roy Williams story, that's one of the things that is the biggest thing, is that he recognizes that there is a fan base. There is a fan base that is desperate for winning. There is a fan base that will give this team support. And there's a fan base that will give this team the love no matter what. You saw on these over the last 7 games, like, fans were still showing up. Fans were still showing out to the Coliseum. They were still being loud. They were still behind this team because they love this team. And so many people in the state love this team. And I think Bob Huggins represents it all. And it's crazy to think about how good of a coach he is and how even just a better person he is. And the way he embodies everyone in the state of West Virginia is something that is just remarkable to me.
Yep, he tries to embody the work ethic of himself and the rest of West Virginia in his players, and he recruits those type of guys. Just, I can't get over the Javon Carter story. 8 a.m, he just got his tall coffee, and he sees a guy pressing 94 feet. His team's not pressing. Javon's the only one pressing. And I just thought it was hilarious. He called it one of his guys. He's like, we got to sign this guy. And I think it was Larry Harrison. He's like, well, can he shoot? Can he do anything else? And Hugs was like, I don't know. He can defend, and he tries
Doesn't
to.
care. He cares
Doesn't
that he
care.
works
He
hard,
said,
he shows up, and he plays hard.
he tries to defend. So those are the type of guys he wants, and you just don't see that kind of association with players to a blue bloods or to a not a blue blood but a blue collar state like what Hugs has done with West Virginia. It's just so unique.
If we're being honest too, and this might you could disagree if you want. I think when there is 14,000 inside that Coliseum, sure they'll get hyped for a 3-pointer. Sure they'll get hyped for a dunk. But when they see those guys running up and down the floor, diving for loose balls, doing all of the dirty work, working hard, playing their butts off, that's why they love Gabe. Like they love Gabe because he plays so freaking hard and he is who they are. Like he is who this state is. He is who the people who he plays for are. And I think that's what this fan base loves. Like obviously they love winning, but when you kind of hear the groans when you see a loose ball and you see other teams get it and you see West Virginia kind of just their players kind of just watch it. But these fans stand up and cheer when they see guys playing hard and they let you know, like they will let you know when they appreciate you. And I just think that's what Huggins looks for is guys who will just put in the effort. And I think if they put in the effort, he's all right with losing because he wants guys that will work hard no matter what.
Yeah. When like Kedron Johnson dove for a loose ball yesterday, I don't even think the Mountaineers scored off of it, but there's a standing ovation. And they're 2-6 in league play heading to the Texas Tech game. And that place was darn near full. So, I know there's been some social media interaction and all, but I hope this team realizes that this state is behind them, this fan base is behind them. Like how many other D1 Power 5 programs would be 2-6 in conference play and you still get 14K out there that are loud? This is a very unique university in the state. WVU is the pro team of the state, and I hope these players realize, even like fifth-year seniors that have like just got here, I hope they realize that they do have a fan base behind them, even though they're 3-7 in conference play. They still have that fan support.
Yeah, looking at attendance numbers real quick, Iowa State, a Tuesday night game after a 7-game win streak, 11,191. That's pretty good. Texas Tech on a 6-game win streak at home without your best player, almost over 12,500. Then you look at it, Oklahoma, almost 11,000. Baylor was a 5 p.m. game on a Tuesday.
That's tough.
They got almost 13,000 people here. And I think that just goes to show how much this state appreciates this team, how much they appreciate their sports. And Bob Huggins he's that guy. He's the guy who can put it all together. If there was one person who represented the people of the state, the way this basketball team is, if there was one person that represented hard work, dedication, showing up early, staying in late, getting the job done, it's Bob Huggins. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. That's my rant. Floor is yours.
That's it. I've already said my piece on Hugs and how, what I feel about it. He obviously deserves to be in. I'm just so glad that I've got to grow up and watch him. They haven't always been good. Like a couple years after the Final Four year, they had some bad teams. They had some teams that did not embody the state of West Virginia.
It looked like that 2019 year. It was a hard year.
Well, I'm talking before that. I'm talking.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm just saying even
the Terry Hendersons of the world, the Jabari Hines of the world. I like not to rip on those guys, but they shot the ball well, but it wasn't a West Virginia basketball team. And a lot of people had their doubts on Hugs. Is he going to pack it up and stuff? And he went out and created Press Virginia. Not many people have gotten to grow up with a coach that good. And yeah, he obviously deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and it's a tragedy that he's not in there already, but he'll get his, like you said, and that's my rant. I've said my piece as well.
Hopefully when he gets his, people around the college basketball world realize the significance of what he's done, and I think they will. You have anything else, Aaron, or we good to go?
No, that's about it for me.
Well, that's going to be it from us today on the BlueGoldSports.com podcast. Again, West Virginia beats Iowa State, breaks the 7-game losing streak, and now they've got the next month. March 5th is their last conference game of the year. So they have until then to kind of make waves, make noise, heading into Kansas City, and then heading hopefully into an NCAA tournament bid. Until then, until next time, we will join you. I think probably we'll give you a preview for Oklahoma State, you think, on Friday, and then give you a post-game reaction then. If you're still listening, we really do appreciate it. This is the BlueGoldSports.com podcast. I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by Aaron Parker, and thank you for listening.